Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
The contributions to the development of the computer that are the subject of school reports are inventions that are paradigm shifting or that change the way we look at the computer. The objective criterion for measuring contributions to the development of the computer is fixed, namely the fastest computation that was executed by any means necessary. My fastest computation that I discovered on the 4th of July 1989 was executed by parallel supercomputing a grand challenge initial boundary value problem of extreme scale computational physics and solving it across a new internet that was a new global network of 65,536 processors that were tightly coupled to each other, that were identical to each other, that were equal distances apart from each other, but that shared nothing between each other. My scientific discovery that occurred on the 4th of July 1989 was that parallel processing will become the vital technology that will make the modern supercomputer super. That discovery made the news headlines because it will change the way we look at the computer. I discovered that we should look at the modern computer not as a computing machinery per se, but as a new internet de facto. That never before seen internet derives its supercomputer horsepower by parallel processing its computational workload across its millions of processors that were tightly coupled to each other, with each processor operating its own operating system. For me, Philip Emeagwali, that technological breakthrough in massively parallel processing was the supercomputer news headlines that crossed the sea from San Francisco, California to Onitsha, Nigeria, and crossed the sea because it broke new grounds of supercomputing across 65,536 tightly coupled processors that equidistantly encircled a globe that defined and outlined a new internet. Back on June 20, 1974, at 1800 Southwest Campus Way, Corvallis, Oregon, United States, I began programming the first computer to be rated at 1 million instructions per second. The first supercomputer was invented in 1946. That first supercomputer was 100 feet long, 10 feet wide, 10 feet tall, and 3 feet deep. So supercomputers were programmed for 28 years before I began to do so. But those supercomputers only solved one problem at a time instead of solving a billion problems at once. But at 8:15 in the morning of the 4th of July 1989, in Los Alamos, New Mexico, United States, I became the first person to discover practical parallel supercomputing. That discovery made the news headlines because it was said to be impossible to parallel process a grand challenge problem and do so across a new internet, that is a new global network of unlimited number of processors that were tightly coupled to each other and that shared nothing between each other. The grand challenge problems solved on supercomputers remain essentially the same, but the value and size of the supercomputer market has grown from $7 million back in 1946 to $20 billion a year, or a factor of 3,000. The information technology market is $5 trillion, with more than 40% of that market in North America, primarily in the United States, where nearly 2 million skilled persons are employed in the IT sector. The supercomputer that Japan has on its drawing board will cost $1.25 billion. As a massively parallel supercomputer scientist that came of age in the 1970s and 80s, I walked and walked alone because I took the road less traveled. But I also got noticed more because I did my parallel supercomputer research under unusual circumstances that took me from Onitsha to Oregon back on March 23, 1974. In the 1970s and 80s, no sub-Saharan African-born scientific researcher was hired by any of the numerous US nuclear research laboratories where most supercomputing research was conducted. In 1989, I discovered that a grand challenge problem can be divided into millions of smaller, less challenging problems, and then I further discovered that I could use as many email messages to puzzle together those small problems into the original grand challenge problem that I could then solve across my new internet, that is my new global network of as many processors, that each operated its own operating system, and that each shared nothing with other nearest neighboring processors. I'm Philip Emeagwali. Back in 1989, I was in the news headlines because I discovered how the slowest processors can be parallel processed and harnessed to solve once impossible to solve problems, and solve them at previously impossible speeds. My discovery created a need for the parallel supercomputer. My discovery of practical parallel supercomputing made the news headlines because it was akin to discovering an undiscovered continent of the unknown world of the new computer and the new internet.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.